So we're going to speak about the two major acts of creation by God. There are two major acts of creation by God. Most of us, we are aware that God created the universe, and that is where we tend to stop in our study of God and the scriptures. But the Bible is a divine book authored by God Himself, and it teaches us things that transcend our natural sight. It tells us things that are beyond the natural eyes can see. The Bible says that a natural man receives not the things of God, for they are spiritually discerned. So a natural man cannot receive the things of God. So you have to be spiritual. You have to have spiritual insight to be able to see those things that are of God. So we're going to go into the Bible because it is a peak. When you see the Bible, your eyes, they penetrate through beyond the physical. And you begin seeing a whole new world of the spiritual. So what are these two major acts of creation? Now, the first one is the one that we are all accustomed to. It is the creation of the universe, which is in Genesis chapter number 1 and chapter number 2. In chapter number 2, verse number 1 and verse 2, it says, and in those 7 days, God finished creating the heavens and the earth and the hosts thereof. So God created the universe and He set it into motion. So in Genesis chapter number 2, it speaks about God finishing creation. Let's first read it. Chapter number 2. It says, thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all the host of them, all the armies of them. So creation of the physical world, the physical universe, everything that we see with our natural eyes, everything that we can relate to in our scientific studies, all of that is God's creation. And God, He expects mankind to see that and acknowledge it, and acknowledge that it is His creation. By seeing that, we are able to realize the power and the Godhead of God. Now, when we see concerning this physical creation which God made, I want us to read through the book of Romans, chapter number 1. Let us see from verse number 20. It says, for the invisible things of God from the creation of the world are clearly seen, being understood by the things which are made, even His eternal power and Godhead, so that they are without excuse. So he says you can know the attributes of God by seeing the physical universe that He created. We can know about His Godhead. We can know about His eternal power by seeing the scope of His physical creation. Now, when you see through the telescope and you're seeing all these planets that are orbiting the sun, and you peek through into deep time, and you're seeing the galaxies millions of and billions of light years away from Earth, and you can be able to see and we comprehend what they are, we are standing in awe of the magnificence of God's power. He says, even though He is invisible, but we can relate with the magnitude of His power and His might by observing that which He created in the physical universe. A lot of times we who are believers, we tend to stick into the scriptures and we are looking down, not opening our eyes to see all that God has created around us. But you see, it plants a sense of awe in you to understand the God whom you call Father. The God whom you call Father. He says the invisible things of God, they are clearly seen, verse number 20, and understood by the things which are made. So when we see the things that are made, you can see that the sun, now when you in astronomy, they say that the sun is so massive, enough to fit 1 point almost 2 or 3 million planet Earths inside of it. It is that big. It is that massive. And it's at such a distance, 150 million kilometers away from the Earth. And yet we feel its power. We feel its presence. We orbit around it. It is so massive. It is so powerful. You can fit 1 million planet Earth inside of it. And from all that we see in astronomy, we know that the sun is a mid-age, is a teenager when it comes to the age of the stars. Now, according to astronomy, we know that the stars, they are born and they also die. The stars are born and the stars do die. And the earth that the sun that we see, it is a mid-age star. It is a star, though we normally call it the sun, but it is a star. So when we see the star, when we see the stars, we see the moon, we see the sun, we see all these planets, we are able to really understand that God is powerful. To even arrange the solar system that it should orbit the way it does, because if you enter another planet right now in the midst of our solar system, you are going to distort the order and the planets are going to clash into each other. At just the distance from the sun of any of the planets, and you're going to have distortions. There's a problem in astronomy which they call the three-body problem. The three-body problem, which if, up until now, scientists, they can't understand why the solar system is as stable as it is. Because according to their predictions and their models, they see that there shouldn't have been enough time for the star for the planets to exist as long as they have around the solar system. But it was Isaac Newton who came out with the three-body problem. And according to Isaac Newton, he said that at some point God normally intervenes to sustain the solar system and the universe, so that the planets don't smash into each other. Now, when we see the solar system on a grand scale, it is so small, it is so minute. When you see it on the scale of a galaxy, the galaxy that we are inhabiting, we call it the Milky Way galaxy. It is so big that it will take light 100,000 years to cross from one end to the other. And yet we know light is the fastest thing in the whole universe. It is so fast at a speed of 136,000 miles per second. Around that estimate, 136, if I'm right. But light is so fast that it takes light 8 minutes to move from the sun to reach us here on Earth. 8 minutes for light, because it is that far, 150 million kilometers away. But light travels that distance in a matter of 8 minutes. So which means when you stand outside, the heat you're feeling from the sun is heat that left the sun 8 minutes ago. That means if you can blind the sun for just 1 minute, we wouldn't know about the sun going dark for about 8 minutes. And yet we are amazed by that distance, we are amazed by those facts in our solar system. And yet the solar system is so small in comparison to the galaxy, the Milky Way galaxy, where we are. So big that the light that goes in 8 minutes from the sun to reach the earth, it will take 100,000 years to cross. Which means if you are to count the history of Adam, 6,000 years ago, up until now, we haven't even gone 5% at the speed of light to cross our Milky Way galaxy. So it is that big, that is a galaxy, and all this is being held and controlled by God. Now the mechanics to maintain the solar system to become stable is so big and so massive. But now you think about God maintaining the whole galaxy. Now a whole galaxy, it has about 100 to 400 billion stars. 100 to 400 billion stars. Billion stars. And that is one galaxy. And remember that each of these stars has potential of holding other planets in their orbit. Now, if the sun is a star and it has got 8 planets orbiting it, how about the planets that are orbiting all these 100 billion stars in our solar system, in our galaxy where we are, the Milky Way galaxy? So which means you have more planets orbiting, more stars in our own galaxy right now, and all of that is in motion. All of that is in motion. So you have the planet Earth orbiting the sun. At the same time, the sun is orbiting the galaxy. It is orbiting. There's a black hole in the midst of our galaxy. It is known as Sagittarius A. Sagittarius A, it is a black hole at the center of our galaxy. It is so massive you can fit 4 million 4 million suns in its midst. Now you see those ratios. As big as the sun is that we can fit 1 million Earth, the sun needs to be 4 million times massive to fit inside our black hole at the center of our galaxy. So even when it comes, there are bigger boys than our sun, which we are amazed at in its majesty and its power. So our galaxy, it is at the center of it is Sagittarius A, the black hole that is the master of gravity, pulling all these stars, all these suns around itself. Around itself. Now, for planet Earth, it takes us 365 and a quarter days to orbit our sun. In a few days, we're about to enter into the new year, collectively as Western civilization, which we believe to be December 31st. What it means is that our sun, our planet Earth, has completed one extra orbit around the sun. Now, the sun itself is also orbiting, but for it is orbiting a black hole. And the way it is orbiting, it will need 250 million years to finish one orbit. According to astronomy, the sun has gone about around 4 times in its orbit around the galaxy. I may not be right about that anyway, but around that times, not so many times it has orbited around the galaxy. So you see, the scale keeps increasing and increasing and increasing. Now, when you think that the galaxy is now something that is too big, too powerful, you wonder, wow, the God who made all this, how powerful is he? How strong is he that he's able to create, number one, and then he's able to sustain this creation? The Bible said that God upholds all things by the word of his power. All these stars, all these suns, all these planets, they are being sustained by the hand of God, by the word of his power. Now, when you think that the galaxy is big, you come to realize that it isn't even the biggest thing. There's what we call the local group of galaxies. Where the Milky Way is, it has got a few neighboring galaxies around it. There are about 1,000 of them. And even in that group, the Milky Way galaxy is not the biggest galaxy. There's what we call the Andromeda galaxy. Andromeda is times bigger, several times bigger than the Milky Way galaxy where we are. And even that one, it's at a distance of 2.5 million light years far away from the Milky Way where it is, where we are right now. So you see that there are local groups where there are a group of galaxies in close proximity, but that close proximity is millions of light years apart. A light year is the time that it takes for light to travel in 1 year. So you are no longer counting time by the vibration of the cesium atom. You are now counting time by the distance that the light travels. Now, when you think that the local group is big, then you have the entire clusters, linear cluster. Then you have the supercluster. Until you go so far away and you see now the universe, it becomes like brain cells, brain stems. So you have got billions and billions and billions of galaxies. Billions and billions of galaxies. You have got trillions of stars in the whole universe. In fact, what we call the universe, what we call the visible universe, it is a distance of 93 billion light years across. So from one end to the other opposite end, when we see, the farthest we can see is a distance of 93 billion light years. 93 billion light years across. And the reason why we call it the observable universe, because we are unable to see beyond that time, beyond that period, beyond that moment. Because if there's anything existing beyond that moment, the light to travel from there, to be able to reach us so that we can see it, has not yet come. Has not yet come. So the farthest we can see is 93 billion light years across. 93 billion light years across. So when you see all that information, you are left to wonder. The Bible says in the book of Isaiah, Isaiah chapter number 40, verse number 12, speaking about God, because we are speaking about God in his first creation. He says, God who has measured the waters in the hollow of his hand. He has measured the waters in the hollow of his hand. What do you mean the waters? He's meaning the combined weight of all oceans on our planet Earth. God has measured all of that in the hollow of his hand. Why? So when he was creating the oceans, he didn't make something massive stretching out his hand. No, he just got a hollow in his hand. He can measure the whole ocean in the palm of his hand. And he measured out the heavens with the span. What do you mean he measured out the heavens with the span? It means that when God sees the entire observable universe, because that's as far as we can see, 93 billion light years across, God stretches the entire breadth of the entire universe between his hands. So when he does like this, the entire universe, as far as our eyes can see, it doesn't go beyond his hand. How big is he? How powerful is he? That the whole creation, the whole universe, as we see it, as we see the whole creation, he fits it between the palm of his hand. One hand. He measures it out like this. Which means God can't fit in the universe. He himself. God who meted out the heavens with a span of his hand, and comprehended the dust of the earth in a measure. So all the dust on the planet Earth, God, he puts it in a measure. He sees it as too little. Wow. And comprehended the dust of the earth in a measure, and weighed the mountains in scales. The mountains that we have here on earth that are insurmountable. People spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to climb up Mount Everest. He says God puts all of those on a scale. And the hills in a balance. He's too big for them. He says, who has directed the Spirit of the Lord? Or being his counselor has taught him. He says, if you want to advise, how can you advise someone like that? How can you advise someone like that? He's so big to that extent. He says, God who measures the waters in the hollow of his hand and meted out the heaven with a span. So all of the observable universe cannot go beyond the palm of his hand. No wonder he says, heaven is my throne. But he says that the earth is my footstool, which means he fills the whole heaven and he goes beyond it. Wow. So he wants us as human beings to observe creation all around us, You look at the rain, you look at the storms, you look at the desert, you look at the sky, you look at the clouds, and all of that, it is God communicating to you. We saw what it says in the book of Romans. Because there's something that is going to happen. Let's first see in the book of Psalms, chapter number 19. Psalms 19. There's something about language, and maybe one day we're going to speak about it. Because language transcends vocabulary. Language transcends vocabulary. Let's see here. Chapter number 19, verse number 1. It says, the heavens declare the glory of God. When you see the heavens, when you see through the telescope, you're seeing all these stars, you're seeing all these planets, as you're beholding the galaxies. He says that what you are seeing is a language. It is a declaration by the creation, by the heavens, declaration of the glory of God. The fact that these things, they are sustained in their orbits, there's an order they are following. It is a declaration of glory. They are testifying to the glory of God. They are testifying to the glory of God. The sun is not there to warm you, just that. It is there as a witness. It is there to declare the majesty and glory of God. He says, and the firmament shows his handiwork. The firmament, it used to be a dome covering the planet Earth. It showed his handiwork. He says, day unto day uttereth speech. So what you see, it is actually the speech of creation. Creation is speaking. And night unto night showeth knowledge. Why is it the human being has been given a mind to comprehend and understand the creation? That we are able to know the stars, we are able to understand the planets, that we are able to see the skies and be able to comprehend what they are doing. We see the moon orbiting the earth once every month. We see the earth orbiting the sun once every year. We see the sun orbiting the galaxy 250 million years. Why are we able to understand all that? To see the mysteries of light, understand them. We look at these planets and we see the way they are. Why are we able to see all of that? Why are we able to understand that removing one planet right now, you will create chaos in the solar system? Why? It says they are showing knowledge. They are showing knowledge. I have told you before how that there used to be an extra planet in our solar system known as Rahab, which was the headquarters of Lucifer before the creation of Adam. That planet is got destroyed by God because of the rebellion that happened before the fall of man. And the remnants of that is what we have today as the asteroid belt in our solar system. It used to be a planet. And you can have evidence of that because since we knew mankind, it is in the last 80 years that man has been able to move from planet Earth to another celestial body, which is the moon. Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and there's another third guy who didn't get enough light in this thing. There was another astronaut who moved with Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin. Actually, he was the one why they were able to come back. Without him, the mission would be a failure. Anyway, so man has been able to go to the moon in the last 80 years. And yet when you go to planet Mars, in a region called Cydonia, there's a human face on planet Mars. And that human face, it is so big, it is 1 mile across. Perfectly symmetrical to a human face. With eyes, with the nose, with mouth, with lips. A human face on planet Mars that is as big as 1 mile across. It's a monument that was built on Mars in a region known as Cydonia. There are pyramids on planet Mars. Why are those pyramids? And in fact, not just a pyramid, because you would say maybe that's an accident. These are 5-face pyramids with angles that it is beyond natural accident to have this thing there. It is a region known as the city. It was called the city on Mars by NASA. So why do we have remnants of civilization on planet Mars? When did man ever go to planet Mars? The answer is none. Man never did that. So whatever put those faces on Mars, whatever built those monuments on Mars, it was something that pre-existed Adam. So when Rahab exploded, that part, God shattered it. He exploded it because it was the capital of Lucifer's iniquity. And his empire, it spanned the whole solar system. On Earth, on Mars, on Venus, on all these planets. They were all occupied before, but not by human beings, but by angels. And because of that rebellion, God smashed that planet. He split it into, broke it into rocks. And there was so much explosion. The destruction was so kinetic that there are some meteors that came from there and smashed into planet Earth, which is why we have some of the massive craters, which people are crediting that they are the ones that destroyed the Ice Age and the dinosaurs era. So those craters, they are there on planet Earth. But the scientific story and background which they are giving to justify that, it is the one that is wrong. But those craters, they are there on Earth. There's one in Siberia, over 2,000 square miles across, in the ice. So that planet, it got destroyed and it was smashed. So when we see that there was this planet which got removed when it was smashed, it caused a lot of chaos, up until the extent that even Mars and the Earth, they were in a synchronous orbit. There are times when the Earth would go behind the Moon, and there are times that when the Moon behind Mars, and there are times when Mars would go behind the Earth. And that orbit, it was not stable until the year 701 BC. That's when they became stable, because the orbit of Mars used to be 720 days, and the orbit of Earth, it used to be 360 days. Today we have got 365, and Mars has also less days than the ones which used to have. But it happened in the year 701 BC, during the time of a king of Israel known as Hezekiah. And that's how all the calendars got changed. Because when you see the calendars in the Old Testament, they all were 360 days for a year. But after 701 BC, all calendars changed. Not only for the Jewish people, but for the Sanskrit, for the Romans, for the Druids, all the ancient calendars, they all changed to 365 days. Why? Because the orbit of Earth and Mars had become stable, so that now they were exclusive from one another. So you see? So my point was, day unto day uttereth speech, night unto night showeth knowledge. So we are able to see this planetary movement, see astronomy, and we are wondering. It is a demonstration of knowledge. And God has a purpose for that. It is his first question, remember. He said, there is no speech, no language where their voice is not heard. There is no speech or language where their speech is not heard. Because language transcends vocabulary. It goes beyond vocabulary. Language is a practice. When God came and split the language of the people at the Tower of Babel, it was more than talking English and then someone speaking French, someone speaking Spanish. No. Because language is a communicator of powers. Language communicates powers. Anyway, so there is no speech, no language where their voice is not heard. So there's no excuse. Wherever we are all able to see these planets, we are all able to see these stars, all able to see this creation that is magnificent. And God expects us to acknowledge him because of this. He says, their line is gone out throughout all the earth, and their words to the end of the world. In them has he set a tabernacle for the sun. So God has given us all this creation so that we can acknowledge him, we can acknowledge his power. Go back to the book of Romans chapter number 1. So that we can acknowledge his power and his Godhead. It is being understood by things that are made, even his eternal power and Godhead, so that they are without excuse. So God expects you as a human being to acknowledge him as creator. He demands it. You are supposed to acknowledge God as creator. If you deny him as creator, there's a huge, huge judgment. Every human being, by observing, you're supposed to help the little ones, you're supposed to help your family, you're supposed to help them acknowledge that God is a creator. Because, interestingly, it attracts a judgment that we are not conscious of. Today we are taken, in our academia, we are taught to deny God as creator. We study evolution, that man came from a one-cell object, a one-cell being that came up, and then it grew, it became maybe a frog, maybe a lizard, then it came out, it was a fish at some point, then it became a reptile that later developed legs, and then it later became a chimpanzee, then it kept evolving until we became human beings. Something like that. Darwinism. Evolution. Man coming from a monkey. I have a question. If man came from monkeys, then how come we still have monkeys today? How come chimpanzees are still around? How come for them they never evolved? But you see, that is what we are taught. That is what we are taught. And children, they are being raised through these schools, and they have less time with their parents to teach them these things, that they grow up and they claim to be atheists. They do not believe in God. Believing in God has become a thing of mockery. To the extent that even when someone says they are so educated, you kind of expect them not to believe in God, because they rub it away from them. They can hardly believe in God. Their knowledge, supposedly, their knowledge blocks their understanding from. Now, let me tell you something. When God created the universe, the biggest thing which he created, it is not the physical universe that we see. Big as the universe is, big as it is, most of it is unseen with our physical eyes. I know it is so spectacular, we are able to see and wonder, but most of the universe is invisible to a physical eye. In fact, according to astrophysics, they say that the physical universe, the visible universe is only 4% of the complete whole. The telescopes that we have, we are only capable of seeing 4%. The other 96% of the universe is what we call, there's dark matter and dark energy. So the whole universe is composed of the first part, which is the physical world, which we see, the planets, the stars, the moon, the galaxies, all of that. We call that the physical universe. That comprises of only 4%. Terrifying as the sun is, magnificent as galaxies are, all the stars that we see, they are only 4% of what science knows to be the universe. The other 96 is a combination of dark matter and dark energy. And they call it dark matter simply because they are in the dark of whatever it is. There's this invisible hand that is controlling the universe, because they say that gravity can't be enough to explain the flow and existence of this physical universe that we see. That is according to science. They say gravity is not enough, so there must be an extra amount of energy that is holding this galaxy together. Because when you have a black hole at the center of a galaxy, it is not enough. Gravity can't reach that far. In fact, gravity, it is the weakest of the four fundamental forces of the universe. The four basic forces of the universe. The four basic forces of the universe. Gravity is the weakest. And yet, black holes are unexplained as gravity at its extreme level. So, the four forces, what are those four forces? The first one is gravity. Then there's the strong and weak force. Then there's electromagnetic force. Those are the four forces. The weak and strong, then gravity and the electromagnetic force. So scientists, even like this famous astrophysicist known as Neil deGrasse Tyson, he said that the universe that we see is only 4%. The other, we do not know what it is. That is from the confession of these scientists, who are very well versed with the universe and they understand how it functions more than we all do, I think. But they say they don't know what it is. That's why they call it dark matter and dark energy. So every book that you see in physics, in chemistry, in biology, every book that has ever been written is only trying to explain 4% of creation. 4% of creation. So if you want to say you are an astrophysicist, you are studied in physics, in biology, in chemistry, in all of that, imagine that if God were to give you an exam, out of 100%, you are only going to be able, with all your knowledge, to answer questions that cover 4% of that exam. And if you're marking, you will never get an A. You can't even get a B. You can't even get a D or an E at that point. So all of the knowledge that we have accumulated in our scientific academia, all our major sciences, all our discoveries, all of that combined is only trying to play in a 4% of what is known as the physical universe. Now, when you speak about dark matter and dark energy, that's where you enter now the spiritual dimensions. And you can't find that in school and college and universities. You see? So the brightest minds that we have, they are only proficient in what is limited to the 4% of the universe. Today we are being indoctrinated to be told that evolution, man came from monkey, man came from all this, man came from all that. But it is a blindness. In fact, the founding fathers of science, Isaac Newton, Albert Einstein, all these guys, they believed in God. They believed in God. In fact, for Isaac Newton, he was so devoted to the Bible more than science that even his literature, he wrote more about the Bible than he wrote about physics and astronomy. Sir Isaac Newton, whom we call the father of physics. He wrote over 1 million words as commentary on the book of Daniel and the book of Revelation in the Bible. 1 million. He studied the universe. He saw it as a cryptogram. He was trying to see the mind of God. But you see, over time, now we are being taught the opposite. That these men never believed in God. It wasn't true. So what happens when a civilization goes against God and refuses to acknowledge Him as Creator? Verse number 21. It says, because now, this one is speaking to modern times, I can see. Because that they knew not, because when they knew God, they glorified Him not as God. Because when you see, like we have said in the astronomy, you're supposed to see God and acknowledge Him. He said that because after seeing all this evidence, we did not glorify God as God. Neither were they thankful. We don't even acknowledge or thank Him. We refuse to acknowledge God. So what happens? You know, let us skip or go to verse number 24. He says, therefore, God has given them up to uncleanliness through the lusts of their own hearts. Because in the previous verse, it says, because they followed their own affections and they followed their own foolish hearts. Therefore, God has passed judgment and given them up to their own affections. He says, to their own hearts. God has given them up to uncleanness through the lusts of their own hearts, to dishonor their own bodies between themselves. What do you mean by this? Now you're going to understand in context. You skip to verse number 26. It says, for this cause God gave them up unto vile affections, horrible affections, to desire that which is not clean. That's what he means. For even their women did change their natural use. For even their women did change the natural use into that which is against nature. So this is a judgment. God is saying people, they are women, they're going to become undesiring of their natural nature, which means to use their bodies for what is right and appropriate. They're going to become lesbians. This is where we have homosexuality coming from. Verse 25, let's start from verse 25. It says, who changed the truth of God into a lie. They changed the truth of God into a lie and worshipped and served the creature more than the creator. They served the creature more than the creator. A few years ago, we had Dr. Fauci claiming that he is the science. The man claimed that he is the science. He's calling science to be a religion. And he's claiming to be the foundation, the fountain of truth. And most of the scientists, that's how they believe. He says, I am science. Okay, Dr. Fauci, you are science. So they decided to worship the creature more than the creator. Therefore, God gave them up to uncleanliness. And he said that their women, they did change the natural use into that which is against nature. It is against nature for a woman to love a woman. It is against nature for a man to love a man. It says, and likewise also the men, leaving the natural use of the woman. So you see, it says even the men. So when you find that we are living in times where right now homosexuality is on rampage, lesbianism is on rampage, it is a judgment. Men have left the natural use of the woman. God gave women to men. But because these men, they were lifted in their own hearts, and they decided to turn against God and turn his truth into the lie, God says, I'm going to judge you for not acknowledging me as creator. I'm going to judge you. So these men, their minds got twisted. And instead of taking the women as God's gift to them and take them up and love them as they're supposed to, their mind got twisted. Their minds got twisted. And they loved men instead of women. Burned in their lust one toward another, men with men, working that which is unseemly and receiving in themselves the recompense of their error which was meet. So you see, it is a recompense for their error. Which error is that? Denying God as creator. Do all that you want on this planet. Acknowledge God as creator. He is so jealous about his creation. You must acknowledge him. You must acknowledge him. I would think that for scientists, they have got a better standing for them to be more humble towards God. Because when you see through the microscope or through the telescope, you are going to be struck with awe. Because there must be a divine source where these things are coming from, where they're being sustained, where God is able to span the universe in his hand. So God says you have to acknowledge me as creator. If you don't, I'll pass judgment on you. You're going to like fellow men and fellow women. That's a judgment. It is a judgment. So God says that this knowledge, it goes beyond, it transcends local languages, human speech. People are supposed to see creation and acknowledge God as creator. When you don't acknowledge him as creator, this is what happens. So when we see homosexuality on the rise, when we see LGBTQ, whatever they are, on the rise, we have to know it's because this world has rejected God as creator, and God has judged them. So that is work number one. Now, there's another work that God, a major work that God has done in the Bible. Now, the first one is the creation of the natural world, the natural universe, both heavens and the earth. The creation, God wants to be known and acknowledged as creator. The other one, God wants to be acknowledged. God wants to be acknowledged as the Redeemer. The first work is God creating the universe. The second work is the work of redemption. We shall talk about that next.